Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's webinar on effective family meetings with myself, Tess Howe, Senior Skills Manager at AHDB, and Heather Wildman from Saviour Associates. We're also being very enably supported by Luke on the technical aspects today as well. So just a little bit of housekeeping for everybody. I'm sure if you've been on an AHDB webinar, you know these already, but if it's your first time, all attendees are muted throughout the next hour, but you do have the option to type any questions. They will pop up on our screen and then we'll answer them as we go through the webinar. If for any reason we don't get a chance to answer your question, we do keep those as a record and we will be able to get back to you as well. We're hoping to finish by about 8 p.m. this evening, and this recording will be made available on the YouTube and the AHDB website in the next couple of days. So if you don't get to catch all of it or you want to just listen back to something, it's there available for you. So just a few introductions. I'm Tess, as I mentioned, I'm the Senior Skills Manager with AHDB. So I'm responsible for helping levy payers get more involved with personal and management training. And I'm joined this evening by Heather. Would you like to say a few words, Heather?
Hi Tess, thank you. Delighted to be able to join you this evening. I have my own business, Saviour Associates. I've been privileged to work in agriculture for about 30 odd years. I come from a farming family business and I've worked with some incredible employers and employees that can bring out the best in you, but I've also been in some companies and organisations where meetings really made you want to give up the will to live. So I'm coming with quite a lot of personal experience in staff management, motivation, leadership, and then also family succession as well. So it's a topic that's pretty close to my heart.
Brilliant, thank you. So to set the scene for everybody and why we feel this is such an important topic at the moment, when we're out and about with farmers, we often hear people saying that they don't actually have specific business meetings because they don't need them. They meet together on a regular basis. They have breakfast together, they have lunch together, and sorry about that. They feel that they're already talking to each other on a regular basis. Now, what we then ask people is, are you really making the best of that conversation? Are you really focused on the business? And if you're not sitting down chatting about the business and where you're going to move it forward, how can you actually challenge the norm and drive your business forward? So we're going to talk today about how we can communicate in different ways as a small business, as a sole trader, and how we can make that more effective for you and your business. So we've done some research in the area as well, and when we did actually do a recent project, 65% of families don't sit down to a structured business meeting, which I think is probably something you've seen in practice as well, Heather.
I'm surprised the number's as high as that. You know, that high that as many have formal meetings. But I think we are hearing more and more starting to do it, which is reassuring. And hopefully after tonight, more people will feel confident in how to approach that going forward too.
Yeah, well, that's certainly the aim. So what we want to do is help people put structure to meetings where in the past your business has probably been run quite informally, especially when it's a family meeting. And we know that actually putting structure in can cause quite a bit of upset. It might put people off. You're worried about upsetting people. You're worried about putting someone's nose out of joint. But I think we can all agree if there's ever been an important time to actually sit down and structure the business and look at where we're going in the future, then actually the time is to do this now.
Definitely.
So I think we'll start with rolling through the different kinds of meetings that we can have. Heather, do you want to just run through some of those for us?
Yeah, so there's a number of reasons why we can have a meeting. We can have like a status and update meeting. Where are we at with silaging? Where are we at with lambing, calving? How's it all going? We reckon, you know, like a regular team meeting should be no longer than 10 to 15 to maybe 30 minutes. What's happening today? what's happening this week, who's doing what, holidays, things like that. Then we can have decision-making meetings, you know, and it's important who's at the meetings. Only have the ones that can actually impact it and be solution focused with there. A decision-making meeting might last a couple of hours. It could even be a full day, which could be, you know, if you're going to be putting the calf shed, getting ready for silage, it could be maybe a quarter ahead of the activity that's going to be happening. Brainstorming, again, these can be, you know, with outside influences as well as with family members, staff as well. Maybe 40 minutes, an hour, keep it short, snappy. It doesn't have to be a full day. A retrospective if we've done a big project, or we've had a big building operation on, or we've gone through a significant investment and it's just been launched. How's it gone? The guidelines for that is about 30 minutes for every week of the project. But, you know, I like to keep things short and snappy. So, and then one-to-one meetings, this could be with the accountant, the bank manager, the family members, a member of staff, 30 minutes to an hour. You know, don't waffle on. And then strategy, if we've got something else big going on, 60 minutes to 90 minutes is kind of a good way to focus on these things. So there's a number of different ways of looking at it, and don't think that it needs to be a full day. For me, it's short and sweet is always better, but keep it purposeful.
That's brilliant. It's really useful run through. But if we're going to have a meeting, Heather, why do you think we should do it in such a formal way? What's wrong with us just standing in the yard and having a chat like many of us do on a regular basis?
And I think there's a lot to be said for that, because I've gone to some businesses and the thought of having a formal meeting just puts the fear of dread in them. And also that they're not good at communicating in a big group. They may be better one-to-one. And I do see a number of businesses where the way they run it is that the farmer, the owner, the manager will maybe go in and do a side of milking, or maybe go and jump in with the potato harvester. In the pickup, we have a blether and a chat, and that's absolutely grand. If it's working for you, brilliant. But what we tend to find is, you know, a number of businesses and families can effectively communicate and they kind of automatically know what each other's doing, because it's a small business, they're aligned, they know where each other's going, they kind of finish each other's sentences. But when I tend to find that we do need to bring in maybe a little bit more formality is if we're starting to bring in family members, the business is growing, we've now started getting employees, and telepathy just doesn't work. You know, people are not mind readers. We do not know what is going in your head. And you've had the privilege of probably thinking for days, weeks, nights, hours about what you're doing, and you just come out with this tumble tirade of instruction. It doesn't necessarily mean a lot. And we can all hear three different things. And so much about what we hear is what we see as well. So don't assume. For me, the best thing is to invest in a 10-15 minute conversation to double check everybody knows what their roles are, what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing, why they're doing it, and the impact they're going to make is really important. And yes, it can take a bit of practice and it can take a bit of discipline, and it can often feel a bit awkward and a bit clunky, but it does pay off. And, you know, and get feedback from the team as well. How did that feel? What doesn't, you know, when should we have the meeting? And simple things to get it started. If the holidays are coming up, there's going to be some changes. We've maybe got a farm inspection or an audit happening, and we're going to do some planning. But also it's a great opportunity to praise people, which is something we are definitely not good at in this industry. Well done. That was a great job. And thank you. So it's all opportunities, so you can start it gently, but to review progress.
So even as a small business or a sole trader, you still think it's worth the time investing in the things we're going to talk about this evening?
Absolutely. This is for everybody, even if it's just sitting down planning with your dog. You know, the dog can often be the best listener. And sometimes having someone to bounce off is when we really draw out some great ideas from ourselves that were in our head, but we just haven't been able to formulate them into constructive actions. It's just been swimming around.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Ooh. So when do we actually decide to have a meeting, Heather? Because it's something I hear, especially in AHDB, we often get, we need a meeting about that. Do we always need a meeting?
Oh God, we don't. I was just doing some Googling, and there was a fact that came up that 40% of workers complain that meetings are where productivity goes to die.
I can agree.
God, yeah, we've all been to those meetings. That half of and another survey was that half of workers that go to meetings say that it's been a complete waste of time. So I love this diagram. You know, there's many a reason should we have a meeting. That the sensible outcome is no, we don't need a meeting. If we're just having a meeting for meeting's sake, do not have it. But, you know, there's an awful lot of reasons why we should have meetings as well, and when it's a really good plan to go in place. But think about, what is the purpose? Can you do it by the telephone? Can you do it by email? Can you do it by WhatsApp? Or is it the right thing to have a meeting? But don't just have them for the sake of having them, because they can be the most destructive, demotivating and frustrating opportunity if they are not well thought out.
And I think we've probably all been in one of those meetings. So hopefully today people can go home away with a little bit more positivity towards meetings.
Yeah.
So first things first, what are we going to talk about at these meetings, and how do we need to be structuring the meeting?
So, you know, we don't want to terrify people that it's a 3-day project to have a 10-minute meeting. But it would be really good if we want to have a lot of productivity out of it. And again, it depends on the purpose of the meeting. But a good meeting should always have an agenda. It should have a clear objective. It should be a specific and defined purpose. And what are we seeking to accomplish from the meeting? People need to know that clearly. And that agenda should be circulated prior to the meeting, so people have an idea of why they should be there. And then who should be at the meeting? Should everybody involved in the business be at it, or only those that can be that can make changes if they're involved? And maybe if they're able to solve a problem, do they need to be involved? So think about who needs to be there. If they can't contribute and they can't actually take any action from it, maybe they're better doing elsewhere and just give them an update afterwards. Really stick to the schedule. Agendas, you know, everyone's time precious. They don't want to be kept later. They're thinking about everything else. So make sure you stick to the agenda, stick to the time, give people notice so that they can schedule it in for them and that they can prepare, because a lot of people maybe need to think and plan before they get in. Don't allow it to be a greeting meeting and people hogging the space and moaning and everything. So when I have a meeting, it's very clear where we're going with. So what's the aim? What's the agenda that we want to be doing? So that we're all proactive and thinking about that in mind, that we're not repeating the past. Start and finish on time, absolute simple. Ban technology, shut the phone, laptops. There's nothing more annoying if someone's twiddling about looking at the phone, they're not listening, they're not paying attention. It shows lack of respect as well. Another thing with agendas, I'm fascinated when we've gone to loads of meetings. You maybe have 10 people at a meeting, and then you speak to them afterwards, and you've probably got 15 different versions of what's happened in the meeting. Mm-hmm. So whatever has happened in the meeting, sum it up with some action points, what we've agreed, and then everybody knows exactly where we're doing, what we're focused on, and what the deadlines are. But really key is who's got responsibility for carrying that out. Really delegate responsibility so everybody knows that they have something to do from that meeting as well.
And there's a question in, what about location? Does it matter where we're having these meetings?
It can, a lot of family meetings happen around the kitchen table, and they can be really effective if everybody knows the time and the place, and we're in a harmonious situation. But when it becomes acrimonious, there's tension, and we're not behaving ourselves, I think there's a real value to having the meeting out with the family kitchen. Because in the family kitchen, we generally all have our designated seats, so we've got a bit of hierarchy in there. There'll be someone will get up and be making food, the telephone will be going, there'll be people knocking at the door. So if it's a really serious meeting and we're going to take it to a new level, I would definitely say a meeting venue that's independent. Now that could just be in the farm office with a do not disturb sign on, or you can take it away and have it in a local hotel venue, in your accountants, in the banks, or your agri consultants. I've seen a number of families now, they have a strategy review meeting once a year in New Year. They go away for a weekend, pick a lovely hotel, and then they book a meeting room on the Saturday afternoon, and they have a couple of hours goal setting and strategy. So it depends on the meeting and everything as well, and where you want it, and it's the size and scale of the business as well. But I think it's a good discipline, particularly from sole traders moving into partnerships or bringing family members or staff members in to try and have a bit of structure.
Yeah, I've certainly heard of farms that have stopped the kitchen table meetings now, and actually if it's a business meeting, it happens in the office. If it's a family meeting, it happens in the kitchen table. And I think it's really important to make that differentiation. I think we've got another question about stopping family meetings getting personal, which we are going to touch on later on. But I think that distinction between business time and family time also helps that. How do you feel?
And I would love it if we got more family farming businesses treating themselves like a business.
Yeah.
So there's job descriptions, there's roles and responsibilities, you've got an employment contract, and everybody has a department or an area of responsibility. Even if you're the junior member and you've just got some hens and you're selling the eggs at the road end, you could contribute to the team meeting about what you're doing. So for me, and it does take a bit of, because we can revert into child and adult and everything as well, and the language and tone, but it's removing the emotion and it's removing the personal, and think about actually if we've got job titles that we can repeat, because I think we all have nicknames and different things that maybe aren't always the most complimentary, but treat it like a proper business.
Yeah, and there's one thing actually missing on our template, and someone's just flagged it in a question. Oh no, actually, sorry, it is on the meeting. It's chair. How do you decide who the chair is?
So I've got a couple of businesses where they take a turn on who is the chairman, and that can work very, very well. But again, it depends on the training and it depends how seriously you take it. And it's, you might need a bit of coaching. And I think Young Farmers is brilliant for chairmanship training and things like that. But there are other ways of learning about what a chairman should do. But it is, I would also say we have ground rules about manners, behaviour, time, tone and language and everything as well. And we respect the chairman, but the chairman needs to have a nice assertiveness, and it's the language that's used.
Yeah, and that final point we've got on the slide, circulate in advance. What's the point of doing that if they're going to come to the meeting anyway? Why do they need to know?
Because everybody takes information in differently. Some people need time to reflect, to think, to gather data, to process, to ask their questions, to be ready. Other people are really instant and spontaneous and they don't need that. So it's giving people a bit of time. It's also letting them know if they need to put a report, an article and everything in place as well, and hopefully to give them a bit more value out of the meeting. Well, this is what we're going to discuss. And families that now have this in place and that they know that once a quarter or once a month, whatever is the timeline for them, it means that you know there's a time and a place to air your views, your points, your concerns, your discussions, and it's not that it's all heated up and then there's an explosion. Yeah. We know it's going to get dealt with and there's an agenda and there'll be a timeline for it. And you also have, when it's circulated in advance, if there's something not on the agenda, you've got the time to add it on.
Yeah. And do you think for a number of the businesses that are listening, with the sole traders, family farms that we've been talking about, what would happen if they didn't put an agenda in place, and that they're all busy people and sitting down and writing out an agenda might be seen as just another tick box exercise?
Yeah, because it can be seen as another thing that's too difficult, so we'll avoid doing it. But even if you just have a note, some people think about it in their head, but we're not mind readers to let everybody else know, and it could get overlooked because something else comes up. So if you've just got even a sheet of paper with some headings of what you want to discuss is a good start. But also that time to stop and think and to plan it makes you think a little bit more about why you're doing it and what the purpose is. So sometimes you can address a bit more. So it's just more of a valuable use of time. You are asking someone to give up 10, 15 minutes. You want them to know that you've thought about it and respect their use of time as well.
So I think we've got an interesting question actually. Can creating the agenda be the first item on the agenda? And I think for your first meeting, I would probably say possibly, but going forward, for exactly what you've just explained, that advanced warning of the topics is useful.
People can be terrified. If we've never had an agenda, there can be a real suspicion. What's going on? Am I going to get sacked? Am I going to get fired? What's happened? and agendas, if we've not had this environment, and I've definitely seen this in staff meetings when we've suddenly started doing it, there's been a real suspicion and nervousness because a lot of people in agriculture are not comfortable with face-to-face eye contact talking. Head down and doing another job while we're talking. So setting an agenda does help to give people why we're doing it and keep a bit of a guideline to it as well.
Okay, so one of the questions we've got in is, and I'm not sure we touch it later, so if you've got a new member of the family joining you by marriage or a partnership, when do you bring those into the family meetings?
Some would say never. Keep them well away. To be honest, the best time is as soon as, but it needs to be in a sort of planned way. What is their role and purpose? And I think when we've got new family members, it's a really nice time to review the structure of the business. What are the skills that we've got existing within the people? What are their wants and desires? What do they like doing? And what are the needs and opportunities that the business needs? So a good time is to say, well, where are we? Where do we want to be? And how can this new member of staff fit in? What do we maybe need to tweak and change on new member of family? And it's a lovely way of an induction, because if you were joining a new company, you would have an induction. You would get a full flavour, an overview of the business, you would get a direction, a vision and goals, and you would know where you fit in and what the expectations are of you. So I would say as soon as.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So setting the tone, you have touched on this slightly, Heather, already. But I think really, can you just run through it in a little bit more detail? So we've decided we're having the meeting, we've circulated the agenda out, but what can we really do to make sure that it's going to work? And we've also got a question in about how do you deal with that one member of the family who needs to be there, but actually is always going to be the trouble causer, always going to act if they don't want to be there.
Give them a job.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
okay.
Get them with the flip chart, get them to take the minutes, give them a job is often one of the best ways. Funny, I used to get a lot of jobs when I went into meetings. For me, when you have the meeting is really important. The timing of the meeting, hangry is a real thing.
Yeah.
So making sure that people are fed and that it's not too warm, it's not too cold, people are comfortable as well. You know, if we're sitting in low sofas and everything, it can be a bit demeaning, or if we're sitting lower and someone at the chair is sitting higher, you know, how the room is set out can be really important. Personally, I think there should be food and drink. Now, alcohol, no, possibly not unless it's a celebratory one, and definitely not if it's a breakfast meeting, probably. But, you know, I think if we're going to ask people to make time to come and it's at breakfast time, a bacon roll and a cup of tea and coffee is a nice thing. They've got up early, they've gone over lunchtime or afternoon tea or something. Make sure they're paid for the time that they come to the meetings as well. It's not in their time, it's in company time. Good light. Morning meetings, I personally prefer. I'm told Tuesday about 2:30 is a really good time to have meetings as well, because we've got over the Monday disasters and everything. Folk have settled in, they've had the lunch, and then right, what's happening for the rest of the week? Maybe some icebreakers. How's your week gone? What's happened? How's the kids? How's the after school? Different things like that. Encourage people to bring notes and to take notes as well. Stay on topic. Your voice and your body language is really, really key. You know, are you smiley? Are you relaxed? Or are you angry and you're dictating and telling? And if we have got some different dynamics within the family, by having that ground rules and saying, like, everybody gets a chance to speak, you don't interrupt, you don't huff and puff and groan, you don't stomp out, because you wouldn't do that if you were, you know, in a professional organisation, or hopefully you wouldn't. And the other thing is, you know, if people are slouching and switching off, ask them a question and engage them. But, you know, if everyone knows why they're there, what the purpose is, what they're getting out in, and they want to feel a good buzz when they've left it. There's nothing worse than if you've left a meeting, even if, you know, it's bad news, there's been a price drop, there's volatility, you know, the harvest hasn't gone well. You know, let's come, but this is what we're going to do about it. This is how we're going to do. And, you know, even just a bit of a joke and a banter if it's timely. So really think about how you make people feel, because what we want is people look forward to these meetings because there's a purpose, and there's a value to them, and that they enjoy it.
And I was in a recent meeting as well, and they actually spend a lot of time deciding on who sits next to who, and working out who interacts the most and how they interact. Is it positive, negative? And actually planning that sort of a little bit more, giving it a bit more time to make sure that everybody gets a chance to contribute, even if they're a quieter member of the team. And the ones that are more vocal, that tend to get their voice heard, actually not get put in their box, but time's taken away from them so that the other people get time. How would you agree?
And I've done some work with some staff where there is always someone that will hand grenade or moan or groan and say something really negative, because that's his way of getting out of the meeting. He's set the tone a bit and he's sabotaged it. But what we do with managing those ones is say right at the beginning, so this is what's gone well, and ask that individual, so what's gone really well that you think, we're not too disappointed with, and that kind of sort of sideballs them a wee bit and knocks them off course. People who are quiet, because I do so many lovely personality traits. And if you really want to get the best out of your family and best out of your staff, it is a good way, whether it be the disc profiling, the leadership. I do authentic leader because I think it's quite nice and real. There's colours, there's loads of different things of ways. And then we can start to see why people react the way they do. Some people maybe need a lot of praise and need more gentle and has the family and everything. Other ones just want bullet points, assertiveness, aggressive to the point. And if we recognise that, and so I have seen in some meeting rooms now, we'll have the different personality types on the room, so we remember why we're behaving that way, and it's not been rude and blunt. And just to make the time to say, you're looking good today, how such and such, thank you for what you did last week. And a lot of managers or family members feel this praise thing, folks should just know. But it's really valuable saying thank you, well done, and we appreciate you giving up your time to attend this meeting.
So if you've had that productive meeting and you've actually got to the point of making some decisions, how would you best record? Some might want to record the conversation, or at least record the outcomes. How do you think that best works in these meetings?
I like someone to keep minutes. Again, it depends on the meeting. If you're just having your 5-minute morning update on the farm staff, in the machinery shed, in the dairy office, wherever it might be, it might even be the sheet of paper. And I've seen a number of farmers, it might be the back of a Weetabix packet or a cornflake packet. When you've seen everybody, whether it be the map of the farm, the routes when we're moving stock, whatever it might be, take a picture and put it on the group WhatsApp, or put the notes up on the dairy whiteboard or the office whiteboard, whatever as well, because with the best one in the world, we don't always remember everything. And we've nearly all got something else going on in our lives that's maybe taking over part of our conscious listening as well. So being able to have something to refer to and review back to, it means we've got more opportunities to succeed. And I do like to make sure that every member of staff, whatever their instruction has been, we've given them every opportunity to succeed, because it's amazing sometimes when we set someone off to go and do a job, we've only given them half the information and there was no way they were going to be able to do it.
Okay. That's really useful, thank you. I think we're getting quite a few questions. We're not ignoring the questions. Quite a few questions about one person who believes they're the boss and that dominant person. But we're actually going to come to that later on. So so do bear with us when you're asking those questions. We will get there eventually. But I think it's one of the reasons why we're doing this.
And that particularly, if there's an age generational difference, if you've got senior members of staff and you're a younger person coming in taking over. So hopefully we will make sure we get time to get to those.
So I think one of the most important things is that when we have got everybody together, how we are really clear with that communication. And we've touched on it on the previous slides, but I think it's quite obvious with family meetings that there's going to be different pressures to that typical business meeting that you and I might be used to being sitting in. And I think we often see there's either a reluctance to challenge, or things are challenged inappropriately because there's too much friendliness, so we're a lot harsher than we could be, and it's maybe done in a rude way. Or when we've got that generational difference that you just mentioned, we don't challenge it, so it's always happened, so we're just going to carry on with it. Or people are too scared to suggest new new information as well. So how do you think we can get over this? What are the practical tips that people can think about?
I know some of my most frustrating times working in organisations when the meeting has happened afterwards in the car park or in the office and everything afterwards. And you think, well, why didn't you ask the question in the meeting? And, you know, there's always someone that has to ask loads of questions and other people just sit and say nothing. And it can be really, really frustrating. For me, whenever I'm looking at it, we need to really know where we're going. And there's a model I use called 1 Minute Manager, which will be available to download and things. Every organisation, every business, every job that you're going to do, what is the vision? What's the goal? What we're doing it for? Why are we here? What's our purpose? And then set agreed standard operating procedures. You know, how is it meant to be done and how is it meant to look? What's our targets and key performance indicators from that? And then agree your timelines and the expectations with it. And then the key part of being a really good boss or manager is managing by walking around. So many times we're busy doing, or we're actually not seeing what's around us. And that then gives you an opportunity to look around the business, look around your staff, observe them working and sort of praise them. Look at opportunities to praise. So many times we see what's not been done, but we don't see what has been done. So when something has been done well, we observe it, we acknowledge it, we recognise it. We praise, we're honest, we're sincere and we're timely. And that endorses good behaviour, because there's nothing worse than when bad behaviour happens or things aren't done right and we shirk it or we just do it ourselves because it's not worth the confrontation. But when things are not done properly, it's substandard, it's either dangerous or it's not been done at all, you need to address it quickly, promptly and timely. You need to take them away separately and do it privately. You need to remove the person from the problem, because so many times we reiterate everything from the previous last 10 years that they've ever done wrong, rather than actually just what is that particular isolated incident. We need to then review, retrain, maybe look at the induction. Have they got the right training? Have they been told? Have they been supported? And if they're consistently, even though you've given them more help and training, consistently not meeting it, you maybe then need to look at, are they the right person for the job? Maybe should be doing something else within the business. Or if it's still not consistent, you've given every single opportunity, honestly, it is a formal warning and discipline. Because if they're not consistent, whether it's a family member, I get very, very surprised and disappointed how many employees are intimidated and bullied by their staff because they don't want to confront and deal with an issue, because we know how hard it is to get good staff. Actually, you'll never get good staff if you've got poor staff.
Yeah.
And family members, we've got a business to run, but have we given them every opportunity? And what we must really, really make sure is we don't have favourites, because it is quite enlightening when somebody gets away with it and somebody doesn't. We have to be consistent in our management.
And I think one of the really good purposes for having the regular family meetings is discussing those issues, so that everybody within that's running the business is actually up to date with those, because we hear so many times about one person dealing with somebody in one way and then the other boss coming along and treating it completely differently. So probably a good way of using the meeting time.
The other thing has been undermined. That's what I come across quite a lot. We were just with a monitor farm the other week, and Dad's retiring, doing a great job, and I think that's a fan tooting it out the window. We recognise we're in there with the crowds. Dad has retired, thinking he's stepped back, acknowledges the son takes on most of the business. Son will then set up the business in the morning with the staff. He's got half a dozen staff. Dad comes in 2 hours later and absolutely undermines him and gets the staff to do everything else. And until we brought it up in the meeting, Dad did not believe he did it. And he was quite taken aback. I said, well, I don't, you're the boss. He says, well, no, there's a number of times. And we had some examples of when Dad had changed the staff, and it puts the staff in a tricky, because they don't know who to and they don't want to be disrespect to a senior person. So what we've done there is now, funny enough, it's on a Tuesday afternoon, Dad and son are going to have a team meeting, and then after that it's up to the son to set everybody up during the day, and Dad, if he has a change of plan, he goes via the son.
Brilliant.
Hopefully they will follow that through.
And I think that probably brings us to your last point on this slide about delegating responsibility. And it's something we know people have a real problem with delegating, because nobody does it as well as you do. But I think we would both agree that that's one of the key things in this thing with meetings, making sure people all have something to do when they come out of it.
And I think we're all perfectionists, but if we're growing a business that we have employees and you know, more additional family members in it, sometimes good enough has to be good enough. By being too perfectionist and by too controlling, we're actually stifling other people. And is that the bigger picture? Is that going to get us where we want to be? Or are we focusing on maybe something that's an £8–10 job where if we can delegate the time properly, we should be earning the £150–500 work?
Yeah. And we've got a question here. Would it be a good idea to ask individual ideas to increase participation by all at the meeting? Personally, I think that's a fantastic idea. If everyone brings something to the table, has responsibility for that, then they're much more likely to go and then follow it through and deliver it to the best of their ability. Have you seen that happening?
Yeah, and it's at the right meetings, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you can have strategy meetings, and what I think is really good, a couple of times a year to get the team together and just say, right, what's working well, what isn't. Everybody come with some ideas. This is where we want to be, but I think you have to manage it by telling them where you want to be, because you can demotivate people if they come up with some ideas that's so off-paced. And you can have a park it whiteboard. So all these ideas can come up and park it. Make sure they're noted, because if they're not, it's just because you never know, it might not be right now, but giving you some time, that might be just an absolute pearl and a gem. So make sure, I love whiteboards, I should be on commission for them. You know, so to have a bit of a fun day, a bit of a strategy, a bit of a, you know, it's often a good time after the peak season, so maybe after calving, after lambing, after harvest. What's gone well, what hasn't, what could we do different, what do we want to make sure it does not happen next year while it's fresh and current, and get people to come with some ideas and some solutions. My kids hate it, but I'm always saying I don't want problems, I want solutions. You know, we all know what the problem is, so tell us how we fix it.
Yeah, and it's something we were talking about with the management group earlier in the week, actually, and my team are probably getting fed up of me now of saying that great idea, put it all on a page. And so we have a template called Plan on a Page, and it just makes them work through what they're trying to achieve, what they really want to do. Does it fit the strategy of the team? How's it going to work? What are the potential blockers and what are the benefits of us doing it? What's the potential unintended consequences of that? And actually, it doesn't take more than 15–20 minutes to fill it in when you're on that, you've got that idea and you're great for it. But it does help people weed out if it's a good idea or not such a great idea.
I had an old boss, someone just said, you don't get fed up with Heather coming knocking on your door with an idea, and you say no, for every 15 rubbish ideas she had 2 pearlers. So he says it was worth going through it, but bless him, he had a lot of patience.
But it is keeping them motivated, isn't it? Because if we say no all the time, they're not going to come forward with those ideas. And sometimes you might know, your experience might mean you know it's a wrong idea, but actually if it's a young eager member of staff, then giving them that chance to run it through can actually increase their motivation.
Yeah, because our whole purpose as employees and as family members is to grow, nurture, coach and mentor people. So yeah, definitely.
That's great. So there's lots of different angles that these meetings could take, and there's going to be some people with different wanting different outcomes from the meetings. That's just people in general. And what are your tips for us actually all getting to an outcome that we're all comfortable with? I'm not going to say we're all really happy with, because it could be a meeting where someone's not going to get their way, but how do we get that successful outcome that makes it worthwhile?
So the examples of these could be whether it be a family meeting, who's going to get what investment, or who's going to want to come into a partnership even within the business. It could be a member of staff wanting more roles and responsibility or a pay rise. It could be the bank manager, it could be your children, it could be husband, wife, partners, it could be contractors, you know, tenants, neighbours. There's so many times we're going to be negotiating. And I think what's really, really key is to be able to put your vision across. What is the goal? What is the purpose? What is the value? And then it's how we listen to other people. And then how we analyse the pros and the cons of how these things are going to work. Absolutely be professional. And I do a few leadership programs with young farmers. And if we are struggling to control the emotion and the passion and the enthusiasm rather than the frustration, the anger, I actually think of a role model. Who is the best boss or leader or negotiator that you've ever worked with? And then think, how would they behave? What are the skills and traits that they've utilised? And then you emulate them. And then I know myself, sometimes I can get quite heated, your voice rises, you colour up, you stop being rational in your language. But by taking that time to breathe and think, I think, right, well, what would such and such do in this position? Really, really helps. How you communicate it, we all take on information differently. Some people need pictures and drawings, some people need to touch and feel and see and smell, some need the detail, the figures, the analysis of it all as well. So when we're wanting to try and put our perspective aside, have we given everyone the full opportunity to see what we are seeing? And maybe we do need to schedule some time in, come and see this farm, come and see this business, come and see this whatever, and then let me show you what I'm seeing, and then tell me why you think we maybe can't do it or how we could make this work. I think also be patient and respectful. The generational values, and that can be senior members of staff as well that have been used to doing things in a set way, in a certain style, and then you've maybe come in as a younger owner, manager, boss, how to be seen and get their respect. Often you need to earn it as well as give it as well, to be, to listen to them, ask them how they've done it, why they've done it, would they work with you alongside different things as well. And then trying to do the problem solving together. There's nothing, more frustrating sometimes when you work with someone that always has to have the answer, always has to take the credit and everything as well. So I think a win-win with it. But listening, actively listening. Have we actually taken in everything they've said, and have we heard it? Because so many times we're already thinking about our reply and why it won't work. And the other way of negotiation skills is, who have you got around you? Having a good team that again strengthens your case as well. So share your vision. We're not mind readers. We don't know what's in your head. So, if you're getting frustrated because people aren't getting on board, maybe think, well, actually, what have you shared? And maybe ask them what they think your vision is. Write it down, draw it, and put the figures and everything beside it and timeline, and sometimes take people to go and see it.
Yep. That's some really useful advice, Heather. Thank you. And we've had a couple of people asking about how you take people with different directions in the same direction, how you can get everybody on the same page. And I think the honesty meeting is a really interesting concept, and one that would be useful for you to run through, Heather.
Yeah, so honesty meetings is when we're not happy, whether it be an employee is getting frustrated and is looking at leaving, or whether it may be a family member isn't being heard, is frustrated in the direction of the business. It could be colleagues working together. It might be your consultant or your accountant you're not happy with as well. And there's nothing worse than when people just sit quiet, don't say anything, and then leave a business or leave a contract. And I think that's where it's observing when there's a change of body language, there's a change of mannerism, there's a change of engagement. And some people would rather put it off and just hope it'll sort itself out. But the sooner we can have that honesty meeting and get it all aired out, sometimes we do need to shake hands and walk away, but a lot of the times it's maybe a misunderstanding, it's maybe just a respect type of thing, it's maybe just a small tweak. But for me, sitting down and getting everyone to share their vision. Where are we? Do we know why our staff come to work? Do we know what they're there for? Some people are really ambitious, really driven. Their work is their life, it's their identity, it's their purpose. Other people, they just go to work to get paid. Their life and everything is out with. And, so it's knowing why we're there and then communicating it. And an honesty meeting, we might have to be blunter and more direct with some people. We might have to sit down and have some difficult conversation, but then coming up with some direction and solution. So it might be whether it be some coaching, it might be some training, it might be some support, it might be just saying, we don't think this is working. You know, no matter how we keep trying, we keep coming back to the beginning.
Yeah.
And why is that? You know, where are we missing a trick? And with some companies in business, we actually have a diary now as well. And a diary on one side of the page, what's working well, what's going really good, praising, because all we think about what we haven't done, what's gone wrong, what's a disaster, what's still to do. And we forget maybe what we've achieved or what has gone well. So by having that direction and having a diary and saying, right, what's gone well, and then on the other page, what's been a challenge or what's been a problem or what hasn't worked, and then reviewing it and seeing if some themes. And if there are themes, what do you need to do about it? Is it you? Because often it's actually us that are the problem and we want to blame other people. So we might have to do some inward looking in that as well.
And I think taking it a step before that as well, wondering how the staff are working. In some of the work that we've done in the past, asking the farm owners and the partners, what are they, what's their vision, what's their objective? And actually, if we had multiple generations in the room, and we've got a template, and that'll be downloadable at the end of the in the next few days after we finish the webinar and it's uploaded. But actually, just what is that vision of the business, and what are the objectives that are going to lead you to that vision? And it's going to be very different for every business. But if we had multi-generations, actually, they'd be looking over each other's shoulders saying, what you put in. And if we haven't had that conversation as a business on where we're going, we don't know where we're going. We're not in the same direction, but also our staff haven't even got a clue.
And the sooner you start this, when there isn't money issues, when there isn't death or illness threatening the family, when there isn't a fallout, we can have a lot more fun with them. And you're right, some people say, well, I don't want the staff to know every fine detail, but it's that level. So your top level, your consultants, your partners, your advisors, your nutritionists, your bank manager, your accountant, they should know exactly where you want to go, your budget, your timelines and everything. And then every member of staff, what role do they play and what impact and which maybe sector of the business are they in? So they know where they can impact and everything as well. And what is their ambition? Some people, again, you know, they don't want to be the boss, they don't want the stress, they don't want the responsibility, they don't want the accountability. Other people are craving it. And if someone isn't up to it, it's then saying, well, how do you support them? And maybe there's another role within the business for them as well.
So we've had quite a few questions about should we bring in somebody else? And it's something I believe in quite strongly, and I know you do as well, Heather. That independent person, do you want to just explain the value that they can bring? Because I know a lot of people would see that as, well, that's just another cost to the business if we're going to pay somebody else.
Farmers have an allergy to paying professional fees, but I tell you what, a right good professional should bring you 10 times their fee back in value. So I've just set myself a challenge there. But I like to think I do add value and certainly challenge the businesses. So an independent, why should you bring someone in? Well, don't just bring anybody in. And, you know, you've got to be fair to them. They're not mind readers either. So many times they will say, oh, that account was useless, or that consultant was useless. But did you actually tell them what you wanted? Or are you expecting them to just know and be a mind reader? So have a real clarity. An independent chairman or non-exec chair, you know, even having these boards and everything are really, really useful. They bring, they've no emotional involvement and no emotional attachment. So it keeps it very much from a clean perspective. They can help control the meeting with the time, the agenda, making sure that we stick to the point, making sure that it doesn't get heated and emotional as well. They also ask the difficult questions and challenge us. They make people accountable and hold people accountable as well. The other thing I hear and say is that, oh, Heather, you don't do anything we couldn't do. And I thought, oh, thanks, that makes me feel really special. But what I'm told is we make it happen. So by having an independent in, you've booked them, you know their fee, the date's in the diary, so you don't cancel it. Whereas often with family meetings, we think, oh, we're too busy, or there's something happening, we'll defer it. When an independent's there, the meeting happens, and because we've got an agendas and timelines and minutes, and there's an, you know, the smart action plans with it, everybody knows they've got to have their jobs done before that next meeting. So even if it's only done that week or the night before, it is still progress. Because I hear a number of families now with the generational views, you know, from generation X, Y, and everything to the millenniums, A number of families, you know, think, oh, we talk so much more than we did with our parents. You're so lucky. And then the kids saying, yeah, we talk, but we don't do. We don't actually implement it. And that is sometimes where, you know, the independent holds people to account. They're also an outside set of eyes and ears. And, you know, they help the family and the business prioritize the meeting by giving it some value. They appreciate the expense and time that's gone into it. And also it's their reputation, how they're seen by that independent as well.
So we've got a couple of people on the webinar, and they're saying that they use their accountant, because they know the business.
Yeah.
And so one of the sort of professionals that is linked into business can be useful, but other companies do find just completely getting an independent person that's not seen the business before, especially if they're trying to do change or long-term business planning, can actually be quite useful for looking at that bigger picture.
But it's really key that you get the right advisor.
And you trust them.
And that you trust them. But, you know, do you want someone that's a yes person that's going to say, you're great, you're doing a wonderful job, and just repeating what you've said? Or are you going to get someone that is going to hold you to account, challenge you, scrutinise your figures, double check where you're going? And, you know, often when we're our sole employers, sole traders and everything, we're not used to that, and we don't like that sort of interrogation. But if we really want to improve, that is good to be held to account and say, well, why are we doing that? Is the right thing? Have you thought about that? Is the best use of that? How's that going to impact your family? How's that going to impact your staff? How are you going to communicate that with them? So that's where, you know, it's who do you want, and is it the right person? And sometimes it's, you know, a family member. Sometimes discussion groups are wonderful for this as well.
And someone else is saying, how should they be financially rewarded? And I think we should never be shy about challenging them about what they're bringing as that independent person.
Yeah, so a non-exec board member or an independent consultant, and, you know, if you're a family member, why don't you even charge for that time? You know, so many families, you know, we do it for the love. Well, love's great, but it doesn't put food on the table. You know, so why don't we say, if we're going to have this family meeting, we're all going to earn £500 minimum.
Yeah.
You know, it's up to the family what they can afford, but set themselves a challenge. We want to get £500 minimum each out of this meeting, and then be accountable that have we achieved that in the next meeting.
Yeah.
So it all depends the different level of meeting you're doing.
Okay, so there's a couple of questions coming in about the typical family farm, when they should be putting retirement on the agenda, people passing away, and then the discussion not following on. So without getting into sort of succession areas, which we have talked about, and we can point you to those webinars, you came up with a really good concept. A couple of weeks ago we were speaking at a conference together, and you talked about when it hits the fan box. And it really struck home, because we hear so many people, when something bad happens on farm, that the people that are left, they haven't necessarily had as much involvement in the running of the farm as they should do, and they just don't know what to do next. They don't even know where the insurance policy is, or something just as simple as straightforward as that. Is there insurance? Who's got the will? Where was the will? So can you just explain that a little bit further?
Yeah, Tess, I think this is relevant for everybody, not just business owners. You know, even in our domestic situations, because some people hold some pretty nice cars and houses and different things as well. So what happens when someone doesn't come home? The how-to manual. How do we run this business effectively if someone's not there? And because we do know people who's, you know, tragically been whipped away far too soon, and we never got to ask them, you know, where did you hide the treasure? But it's things like wills, power of attorney, the deeds of the property. Where's all the bank information? Who's got the bank information? What are the passwords? You know, how vulnerable and exposed to you are you if someone doesn't come home? Where's the drains? Where's the stopcocks? Where's the meters? You know, so I would have a chapter for all the business side of things. You know, who's the executors for the wills as well? The insurance, accountants, bank managers, who are they? What company are they? When are the renewals up to date and everything? Just on a simple spreadsheet. But then, depending on your enterprise, some people have quite diverse enterprises, so they might have poultry, dairy, arable, and some tourism. So have a chapter for every single enterprise, and you know, the standard operating procedures, how to put the parlour on, how to wash it, how to clean it, you know, all the different things, the breeding, the genetics, the feeding, the grass, the grazing, with the machinery, you know, how do we service it, where do we maintain it, what's the rotation, and have all those things like for inspections, you know, your farm assurance inspections, your buyer inspections. If you've got prototypes and procedures and everything all in place, I tell you what, holidays are a lot more relaxing, and you're more likely to take your holidays because the people know how to do it when you're not there. But also people will thank you. And I've just heard too many tragic stories when they just think, we just wish we'd had this.
Yeah.
So if you get nothing else out from tonight, think about that. How exposed and vulnerable would you be if a couple of key members, and it might not be members of family, it might be key members of staff that have been with the family business for a number of years, and you just leave them to it.
So we're going to put some templates out there together, but I think, as Heather says, if there's just one thing you're going to do from today's meeting, then please do use the templates and use that how-to box as your first agenda. And we'll make sure that's available for you. We could do a template on that agenda for that particular meeting. So we'll make that available to you. Now we're heading up to 8 o'clock now, and as this is titled Effective Meetings, we're going to stick to time. Just one last question about where farms have diversified. Should you be talking about both businesses in the one meeting, or should you be talking about them in enterprise-specific meetings?
You can have a whole business review. So think of, you know, if you were a supermarket, or if you were, you know, a commercial business. So say you're a supermarket, we'll keep brands out of it. They'll have the fresh, they'll have the frozen, they'll have the electrical, they'll have the alcohol, they'll have the stationery cards and everything. Every head of department will give a review. So what I say is, I actually get my businesses now to have a great big wall planner and a seasonal planner. So every enterprise, we have the busy seasons, peak seasons. So when we're meeting up today on the 9th of December, we're planning what we're going to be doing on the 10th of March. So, and then which sectors are relevant. So we probably wouldn't be talking about certain things because that's done and dusted. So we might just do a review of how that went, and then what's happening, what's immediate, what's medium planning as well. But I think it's really, really good if we have different people taking control and responsibility for different sectors, because then we've got buy-in, we've got purpose, and we've got accountability.
And that's brilliant. So there is a couple of questions that we're conscious haven't been answered, but we'll make sure that you get an email from us. We know who you are, and apparently Luke can get in touch with you. So don't worry that we haven't answered it, but I would just like to really quickly wrap up with a couple of points that I've picked up, and in no particular order really, but I think the key messages from today, and Heather can add in if she'd like to. Plan in advance.
Definitely.
Make sure everybody knows what they're there for. Make everybody comfortable, regardless of who they are, which level of the business they're working in. Make sure everybody's comfortable with that setting. Make sure you've got a clear shared outcome.
Yeah, why they're there, the purpose.
Give respect and responsibility to get the most out of people. You might expect the respect, but actually you should be giving it as well. Everybody's different, so maybe our communication styles do need to change depending on who we're speaking to. Honesty is the best policy, and be clear. And I think the one thing that you've said quite a few times today, nobody is a mind reader. So make sure those outcomes are clear and are communicated.
And utilise every opportunity to praise.
Definitely. Yeah. So just to wrap up this evening, AHDB is planning some communication workshops. So if you've been interested in this webinar, but you'd actually like to increase those communication skills, then please do get in touch with us, either to myself, Tess, or to Amy, who works in our team. And the templates and checklists that we've discussed this evening are all going to be available online. We are going to modify a couple of them, so just bear with us. It might take a couple of days. But that's all from me. Thank you very much, Heather. That's been a really useful presentation.
I've loved it. It's been great. Thanks, Tess. And thank you for all the questions. That's been brilliant. And yes, I do travel to Northamptonshire.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everybody.